The siren wailed like a wounded animal, each pulse making the steel under Kael's boots shiver. He yanked the rebreather from his face, gasping, and froze when the visor caught his reflection. Not his face, but a black lattice writhing beneath his skin. Somewhere in the ship's darkness, a woman's voice crackled over the intercom. "It's happening again." His hands trembled. "Not here," Kael muttered. "Not now." The bulkhead groaned as something massive slammed into it, the sound like bones breaking underwater. The emergency lights strobed red, rhythms syncing with the panicked hammering of his heart. He reached for the rail, but black threads pulsed up his wrist, alien and alive. A child's laugh drifted through the haze, light and haunting. "Lyra." His voice cracked, tasting the name like blood. She'd been gone for 3 years, burned with the colony when the Empire came. Yet her presence hung in the corridor like a scent he couldn't shake. Data screens along the wall flickered, and the ship's schematics twisted into a heartbeat pattern. He didn't remember moving, but the floor under him was slick, and the stench of ozone clawed his lungs. Somewhere behind him, a footlocker burst open with the impact, dog tags spilling out beside a folded piece of paper. He knew what it was before touching it, her drawing of a star and 3 stick figures. The laughter came again, closer, sharper. The steel rattled as the impacts grew heavier, and Kael realized the lights weren't flickering because of the ship. They were blinking in time with him. The impacts faded into a deep, oppressive silence, broken only by Kael's ragged breathing. He pressed himself against the wall, feeling the cold leach through his armor. The corridor ahead sloped into darkness, the kind that swallowed light rather than hid it. He'd fought in enough war zones to know the air itself could turn hostile. "Bridge, this is Rios," he said, voice low. "We've got movement in Section 4. Static hissed in response, carrying with it a faint whisper he couldn't place. He stepped forward, each boot fall clicking against steel plates slick with condensation. The child's laughter had stopped, replaced by a slow tapping, like nails on glass, keeping pace with him. A thin mist curled at ankle height, brushing against him with deliberate weight. He reached the junction, hand hovering over the sidearm at his thigh. The tapping grew louder, closer. He aimed down the right corridor, but the sound came from the left. The hollow lights along that passage flickered, showing glimpses of warped shadows crawling along the ceiling. His pulse matched the strobe. He wanted to call out, but the memory of Lyra's laugh held his tongue. Instead, he took the left path deeper into the dark. The left corridor narrowed, forcing Kael's shoulders to brush the bulkheads. The air here was warmer, damp, carrying the smell of copper. Something ahead hummed, a steady vibration that crawled into his teeth. He moved slow, sidearm raised, scanning every panel seam. The hollow strips along the wall pulsed weakly, casting thin, uneven light. In one flicker, he thought he saw a figure leaning from a doorway. In the next, it was gone. "Sarah?" he asked, almost hoping for her voice. Instead, a metallic creak echoed above him. He swung the weapon up, catching sight of something long and black, sliding along the ceiling before disappearing into the vents. His chest tightened. He quickened his pace, eyes darting between floor and ceiling. The humming deepened, resonating in his bones. He reached a sealed door marked with faded hazard glyphs. The panel was dark, but heat radiated from the steel. He touched it, flinching back. The warmth was almost human. The humming ceased abruptly, and the silence was worse. Kael's breath fogged the air in short bursts. He keyed the manual override. The hazard door groaned, splitting open just enough for him to slip inside. The room beyond was low lit, awash in deep blue from a single failing lumen. Shadows clung to the walls like stains. At the center, a containment tank pulsed with soft light, tubes running from it into the ceiling. Inside floated something vaguely humanoid, its features blurred by the fluid. Kael's stomach dropped. It was the same lattice pattern crawling under his skin, coiled tight around the figure inside. He stepped closer, pressing a hand to the glass. The thing's head tilted toward him, and a mouth formed where there had been none. "Kael," it said, in Lyra's voice. Kael stumbled back, weapon raised, but the figure inside didn't move. Its eyes opened, silver, unblinking, and the lattice inside him answered, a sharp ache surging through his chest. "This isn't real," he whispered, but the tank's fluid rippled as if in response. The voice came again, clearer. "It's time." He fired. The glass didn't break. Instead, the bullet dissolved midair, fracturing into a cloud of black motes that sank into the fluid. The figure's mouth curled into something like a smile. The room's lights stuttered, plunging them into darkness for a heartbeat. And when they came back, the tank was empty. Behind him, footsteps echoed, slow and deliberate. He turned, sidearm shaking. A shadow detached itself from the corner, moving like smoke given form. "You were never just human," it said. Kael backed toward the corridor, but the shadow didn't follow. It lingered in the corner, the suggestion of a body within a haze that bled into the walls. "You were made for this," it said, its voice shifting between registers. Man, woman, child, until Kael's skin prickled. He stepped into the hallway, keeping his sidearm up, but the ship felt different now. The deck vibrated underfoot, not with impacts, but with something steady, alive, almost like breathing. He tapped his comm again. Bridge respawned. Only static. Beneath the hiss, a new sound, a steady inhuman heartbeat. He moved forward, drawn toward it despite himself. The corridor ahead stretched farther than it should have, the walls slick with condensation. Every few meters, the lights dimmed, and the hum in his chest deepened. His hand brushed the rail, and pain shot up his arm, making him drop the gun. Black tendrils writhed from his palm before pulling back under the skin, leaving his breath ragged. He retrieved the weapon, ignoring the tremor in his hands. The heartbeat was louder now, filling his head. When he turned the next corner, he froze. There, in the center of the hall, was Lyra, her bare feet leaving no sound, her eyes locked on him. Kael's breath caught. "Lyra?" The girl tilted her head, no flicker of recognition in her glowing eyes. She took a step forward, her face illuminated by the cold strobe, and he saw the lattice under her skin, delicate, shifting patterns like black frost. "You're not real," he said, but the words felt hollow. She raised her hand, palm outward, and the air between them shimmered. His weapon grew heavier in his grip, metal warping until it bent, useless. "Stop!" he shouted, stumbling back. She didn't stop. The shimmer expanded, filling the corridor with a low thrumming, and Kael felt it resonate in his bones. Memories, not his own, flashed. Alien skies, cities of glass, a war waged in silence. She spoke, voice soft but carrying, "They're waking up." Before he could respond, the lights cut out completely. The hum became a roar in his head, and when the lights blinked back on, she was gone. Darkness swallowed the space for a moment too long. When light returned, Kael was alone, the air still charged with static. He moved quickly now, boots thudding on the deck, desperate for the bridge. Every junction seemed wrong, corridors looping back on themselves. He passed a viewing port and stopped short. Outside, the stars were gone, only a vast shifting black, like an ocean seen from beneath. Something massive moved within it, a shadow inside the shadow. It pressed closer to the glass, and Kael realized it wasn't outside. It was pressed against the hull, studying him. His breath fogged the pain. The surface bulged slightly inward before relaxing, like a lung exhaling. He stepped back, heart pounding, and the deck beneath him shuddered as though the thing outside had wrapped around the ship entirely. Kael turned from the viewport and found himself in a different corridor without moving. The metal here was older, rust creeping into the seams, the air heavy with the scent of brine. He reached for the wall and felt it flex under his hand, warm and faintly pulsing. "This isn't possible," he whispered. The hum returned, deeper this time, and the bulkheads around him rippled like disturbed water. Footsteps echoed behind him, heavy, deliberate. He turned, weapon raised, and saw a figure in full black armor, visor opaque, moving toward him. The stranger stopped a few meters away. You shouldn't be awake yet, the modulated voice said. Kael steadied his aim. Who are you? The gear tilted their head. The same as you. Before Kael could respond, the wall between them and the figure split open, spilling cold light and drawing the armored shape backward into the opening. The gap sealed instantly, leaving only the silent corridor. Kael stood frozen, the silence after the wall closed almost deafening. His hand shook as he lowered the weapon. The hum in the walls was still there, slower now, like a heartbeat at rest. He pressed his palm against the bulkhead and felt it beat once under his hand, strong enough to jolt his arm. Bridge, this is Rios. If anyone hears this. He stopped, knowing no one would. A faint vibration passed through the deck, moving away from him, deeper into the ship. He followed, his boots echoing in the empty corridor. The path narrowed, the walls curving inward until he felt caged. Ahead, a hatch stood open, light spilling out. He stepped inside to find a chamber lined with dormant pods, each containing a figure, human shapes, but all with the same black lattice crawling beneath their skin. His own pulse quickened in answer, and the chamber lights flared. One of the pods hissed open. The pod lid hissed fully open, vapor curling into the cold air. Kael stepped forward, weapon raised, the hum in his veins rising with each breath. Inside, a man sat up slowly, his features eerily similar to Kael's, but sharper, his eyes a perfect mirror of the alien black that sometimes overtook Kael's own. The man tilted his head, studying him with detached curiosity. They didn't tell you, he said, his voice like Kael's but layered with an echo. Kael swallowed hard. Tell me what? The man stepped out, the black lattice flowing openly over his skin, alive and shifting. You weren't recruited, you were grown. Kael shook his head. No, I was born planetside. But images slammed into his mind, sterile labs, rows of pods, faces identical to his. The man, no, the other him, smiled faintly. We are the weapon, Kael, and you're the last one still pretending you're human. The words echoed in his skull, and for a moment he couldn't tell if they were spoken or simply thought into him. Kael tightened his grip on the sidearm, but the other him didn't flinch. Why am I seeing her? Kael demanded. The duplicate's head tilted again, as though considering whether to answer. Because she's the lock, he said finally. And you are the key. Kael's stomach nodded. Lyra's dead, no, the other corrected. She's dormant, just like the rest of them. He gestured to the rows of pods. Wake her and you wake us all. Kael's breath grew shallow. And if I don't? The other stepped closer, the black lattice rippling. Then they'll use her heartbeat to wake us without you. A low, distant thud reverberated through the ship, followed by the groan of shifting metal. The lights dimmed, and Kael felt the pull in his chest intensify, dragging him toward the far end of the chamber, where a single pod glowed faintly brighter than the rest. Kael moved toward the glowing pod, each step heavier than the last. The other didn't follow, just watched with something between pity and pride. The pod's surface was warm to the touch, vibrating faintly, and as he wiped away the condensation, his breath caught. Lyra lay inside, eyes closed, braids fanned around her head like she was underwater. The lattice beneath her skin was faint, pulsing softly in rhythm with his own heartbeat. His hand stayed pressed to the glass as memories, real and false, collided. Her laughter in a sunlit yard, her voice reciting alien words he shouldn't understand. Kael, she whispered, though her lips didn't move. He staggered back, heart racing. The glow from the pod intensified, casting long shadows across the chamber. Behind him, the other's voice came low and certain. Choose. The choice felt like a weight crushing Kael's chest. His finger hovered over the pod's manual release, the hiss of the chamber's ventilation suddenly deafening. If I wake her, he said, I lose her. The other Kael stepped forward, shadows clinging to his form. You never had her. They built her for you, to control you. Rage flared hot in Kael's stomach. She's not a thing. The duplicate's expression hardened. Neither are we. A tremor shook the deck, knocking Kael's hand against the control panel. The pod seals unlocked with a metallic click. Fluid drained in rivulets, vapor spilling onto the floor. Lyra's eyes opened, silver and unblinking, and the lattice surged across her skin in a wave. She stepped from the pod, weightless, and the temperature in the room dropped instantly. Every pod light in the chamber flared to life. The light was blinding for a moment. When Kael's vision cleared, Lyra stood between him and the other, her gaze flicking between them. "You're the same," she said softly. But it wasn't a question. The other Kael smiled faintly. "Now you understand." The chamber hummed, pods hissing as their seals began to break. Kael took a step toward Lyra. "Come with me, we can get out." But she shook her head. "There's nowhere to go." The lattice under her skin pulsed faster, sensing with his heartbeat until it hurt. The other spoke again. "Either we take control, or they do." More pods opened, and figures stepped into the cold light, each bearing the same black lattice. Kael felt the ship itself shudder, like it was waking with them. Lyra's voice was almost lost in the noise. "Choose, Kael." The chamber's hum deepened into a low, resonant thrum as more pods opened. Steam curled around Kael's boots, and the metallic floor beneath him vibrated with the synchronized footsteps of the awakening. Lyra stood perfectly still, but her silver eyes tracked each figure stepping into the light. The other Kael moved closer, his lattice glowing faintly, and Kael could feel the same heat crawling under his own skin in answer. "They're not soldiers," Kael said, almost to himself. "They're conduits," the duplicate replied. Kael's gaze flicked to Lyra. "And her?" The answer came from her directly, the signal. The realization struck like a blow. She wasn't here to be saved. She was here to start something. The ship's walls trembled, and for a heartbeat Kael swore he heard something vast and alive moving through them. The others began walking toward the chamber exit, their movements eerily in sync, their heads turning as one toward him. Lyra extended her hand. "Come," she said softly, "or be left behind." Kael didn't move. The group passed him, silent except for the faint rasp of bare feet on steel. As they filed into the corridor, the temperature seemed to drop further, frost spreading along the walls in intricate branching patterns. Kael followed at a distance, sidearms still in hand, though it felt useless. The corridor lights flickered overhead, casting the group's elongated shadows forward until they merged into one continuous shape. Somewhere deeper in the ship, a klaxon began to wail, but the awakened didn't react. Lyra glanced back once, her expression unreadable, before facing forward again. The other Kael walked beside her, speaking in a language Kael didn't recognize but somehow understood. Orders, directives, a plan unfolding. The lattice under Kael's skin stirred like it wanted to join them, like it knew the words already. They reached an airlock door, its surface slick with condensation. The duplicate pressed his palm against the panel, and instead of opening mechanically, the door seemed to dissolve, edges melting into a liquid sheen before reforming as a widened archway. Beyond it was not another corridor, but a vast cavernous space pulsing with light, organic, alien. Veins of bioluminescence crawled across the walls, converging at a central spire that rose like the spine of some colossal creature. Kael stepped through, his boots sinking slightly into the warm living floor. The air was thicker here, every breath carrying a faint metallic taste. Lyra's voice echoed in his head rather than his ears. "This is the heart." He felt it, steady, immense, a pulse not just beneath his feet, but inside his own chest. The group fanned out in a wide circle around the spire, each figure placing their hands on its surface. The light within it intensified, flowing into their bodies like rivers into dry earth. Kael felt the pull again, harder now, his heartbeat syncing perfectly with the rhythm of the spire. Lyra approached him slowly. "You can't fight it," she said. "It's already inside you." He shook his head. "Then I'll tear it out." She almost smiled. "You'd tear yourself apart." The duplicate's voice came from across the circle. "That's what they want, to break you so they can control what's left." Kael's hand trembled as he reached toward the spire, not out of choice, but because his body was moving without his permission. The moment his palm touched it, a flood of alien memories surged into him. Wars spanning centuries, worlds burning, and the cold knowledge that he had been there for all of it. Kael ripped his hand back, gasping, but the images didn't stop. He staggered, grabbing the edge of the spire for balance, and saw flashes of himself, hundreds of selves, standing on battlefields, giving orders to fleets, watching planets fall. Lyra's small hand touched his wrist, grounding him. "It's who you are," she said softly. "It's who you've always been." The other Kael stepped forward, the lattice on his skin now blazing. "You've seen it. Now decide, fight with us, or be erased when they come." In the distance the ship groaned, metal straining as something massive docked against it. The floor trembled, and faint through the walls came the sound of boots, not barefoot but heavy, armored. Whoever they were, they had arrived. Lyra's grip tightened. "Choose, Kael, now." The tremor under Kael's boots deepened into a pounding rhythm as the heart chamber's walls contracted like lungs exhaling. Through the archway, a squad of armored soldiers stormed in, helmets gleaming under the spire's light, rifles raised. Their armor bore the insignia of the Galactic Empire, the same force that had burned Lyra's colony to ash. The awakened didn't flinch, but the air between the two groups shimmered like heat over metal. The lead soldier's voice boomed through a helmet speaker, "Step away from the structure." Kael's pulse hammered in his ears, in perfect sync with the spire. The duplicate stepped forward, voice cold. "You're too late." The soldiers advanced, weapons humming with charge. Lyra's hand tightened around Kael's, and he felt the lattice under his skin surge like wildfire. The chamber's light dimmed, focusing on him, as if the ship itself was waiting for his command. Kael's weapon felt impossibly heavy. The soldiers fanned out, taking positions, their movements crisp and mechanical. The awakened formed a protective half-circle around the spire, silent, eyes locked forward. The duplicate turned to Kael. "You choose who survives." Kael's breath fogged in the cold, tension coiling like a spring in his chest. One wrong choice meant the Empire would seize the spire, and with it, control over every awakened in existence. But standing with the awakened meant embracing the truth. He was one of them. Lyra stepped in front of him, her small frame shielding his. "If you fire," she whispered, "you'll kill yourself." The lead soldier raised his rifle, the whine of its core charging echoing in the chamber. The air cracked as the first shot rang out, not from Kael, but from one of the soldiers. The beam struck an awakened in the chest, the body dissolving into black motes that spiraled into the spire. The duplicate snarled and launched forward, moving faster than Kael's eyes could track. The awakened surged with him, their movements inhumanly precise. Kael froze as the lattice inside him responded, urging him to join the attack. He stepped forward, but Lyra's grip anchored him. "If you move, you'll finish it," she said, her voice almost lost in the chaos. The spire pulsed violently, each beat shaking the chamber. More soldiers fell, their weapons scattering across the floor. Kael's vision blurred at the edges, his body vibrating with the same alien rhythm. The battle was over, in seconds. The remaining soldiers collapsed, weapons clattering onto the warm floor. The awakened stood unmoving, faces expressionless. The duplicate approached Kael, his eyes alight with alien fire. "Now you see why we can't let them win," he said. Kael's gaze swept the chamber. Empire dead on one side, the silent, waiting awakened on the other. "And if I stand with you?" he asked. "Then you lead us," the duplicate replied simply. Lyra stepped closer, silver eyes searching his face. "If you lead," she said, "you'll never go back." The spire dimmed slightly, its pulse slower now, almost expectant. Kael's hands shook, the weight of every life in the room pressing on him. The chamber door slammed shut with a sound like a dying breath. The ship shuddered again, not from combat, but from engines spooling to life. Somewhere deep within, the AI's voice whispered in Kael's mind. "Course locked." Lyra's fingers slipped into his palm. "They'll hunt us," she said. "Everywhere." The duplicate stepped forward, gaze steady. "Then we strike first." Kael looked from her to him, then to the spire. Every choice felt like a betrayal of his past, of himself. He closed his eyes, feeling the ship's pulse match his own. When he opened them, the alien black had fully consumed his irises. "Then we move," he said. The spire flared bright, and the ship leapt into the void. Stars stretched into streaks as the ship tore through FTL space. The chamber's light faded to a dim, steady glow, the awakened dispersing in silence. Kael stood near the spire, Lyra at his side, the duplicate watching from a shadowed corner. "Where are we going?" Kael asked. The ship answered with a low, thrumming pulse in his chest. "Home." The word didn't feel human. Lyra tilted her head, her gaze far away. "Not your home," she murmured. "Ours." The lattice under Kael's skin tightened like a coiled net, as if preparing for something. He could feel the others aboard, every heartbeat, every breath, like they were threads in a single vast web. The duplicate stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Once we arrive, the connection will be permanent, no turning back." Kael's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, to ask what that meant, but the hum of the ship seemed to absorb the question. Kael left the chamber, moving through the ship's curving corridors. They felt more alive now, walls flexing subtly, veins of light running along the floors. Every step he took seemed echoed by dozens of unseen footsteps, the presence of the awakened pressing on him from all sides. He passed a viewing bay and froze. Outside, their destination loomed, a world unlike any he'd seen, its surface a swirl of metallic plains and glowing rivers, orbiting a dead black sun. The sight stirred a memory not his own, standing on that surface, hearing a chorus of voices in his head, feeling infinite and hollow all at once. Lyra appeared beside him without sound. "It will feel familiar," she said, "because it is you." The ship descended through a haze of glimmering particulate, the alien planet's surface rising to meet them. Kael's pulse raced in sync with the ship's engines. He stood in a side bay with the duplicate and Lyra as the hull vibrated. "Once we touch down, they'll know," the duplicate said. Kael frowned. "Who?" Lyra's voice was almost a whisper. "The ones who left." Before Kael could ask, the bay door split open to reveal a vast plain of black glass, stretching toward a distant spire taller than mountains. The air shimmered with heat, despite the absence of sunlight. Every breath Kael took felt like inhaling memory. He stepped forward, boots crunching on the brittle surface, the sound echoing far too loud in the open stillness. They moved toward the spire, the ground fracturing under their steps to reveal faint light below. The awakened followed in perfect formation, their footsteps soundless. Kael's every muscle tensed, the lattice under his skin now a constant burn. "This place feels wrong," he muttered. The duplicate didn't look at him. "That's because you remember what happened here." Images flashed through Kael's mind, cities crumbling, the black sun collapsing, rivers boiling into steam. "We did this," Kael said, the weight of it heavy in his chest. Lyra glanced at him, her voice steady. "You did." The spire loomed larger, its surface flowing like liquid metal, and with each step, the pull toward it grew unbearable. At the spire's base, the awakened spread out, forming a vast circle. The structure's surface rippled as Kael approached, each step answered by a deep, resonant pulse. The duplicate stopped him with a hand to his chest. "If you touch it, you lead them. If you walk away, they'll find another." Lyra stepped forward, her silver eyes reflecting the shifting metal. "No one else will protect them," she said softly. Kael's gaze swept the circle, hundreds of eyes on him, their faces expressionless but expectant. The lattice inside him surged, the burn now a demand. He stepped forward, the spire rising above him like a living storm, and placed his hand against it. The instant he made contact, the black sky split open, and something vast and ancient looked back at him. The spire's surface convulsed under Kael's palm, heat surging up his arm until it seared into bone. His vision fractured, replaced by 1,000 overlapping perspectives, cities burning, ships eclipsing suns, voices merging into one. He was in all of them at once. The awakened around him sank to their knees, their black lattice glowing in perfect unison with his own. Lyra's voice cut through the noise, not from her mouth but inside his skull. Now lead. The duplicate stood motionless, a faint smile pulling at his lips. The sky's fissures widened above, spilling white fire into the dark. Kael's breath came in shuddering bursts, every inhale pulling more of the spire's alien pulse into him. He realized that the connection was irreversible. He wasn't becoming their leader. He was becoming their hive. The ground shook as a shadow fell across the spire. Above, vast structures descended, black, jagged, and bristling with movement. Kael knew without knowing that these were the ones who had left, returning to reclaim what they abandoned. Their presence pressed against his mind, probing, testing. The awakened rose in unison, turning toward the horizon. Lyra's grip on his hand tightened. They will not stop, she whispered. Not until they take it all back. Kael's voice was raw. Then we stop them here. The duplicate's lattice blazed like molten glass. You can't win a war against what you are, he said. Kael didn't answer, his gaze locked on the approaching leviathans, the weight of inevitability settling in his chest. They came like a tide, pouring from the descending structures in streams of shifting shadow. The awakened surged forward without hesitation, their movements a mirror of Kael's instincts. Every time one fell, he felt the loss like a blow to his own chest. He moved into the fight, the lattice in his arms flaring like living armor. Lyra stayed behind him, her voice steady even amid the chaos. You hold them, I'll guide them. He didn't have to ask who she meant. The battle roared, alien against alien, the air alive with pulses of light and bursts of shattering glass. Above, the black sun split entirely, bleeding white fire into the void. Kael felt himself slipping, every strike pulling him deeper into the hive's collective mind. He saw through the awakened around him, their vision blending with his, until there was no I, only we. The duplicate appeared at his side, fighting as if they shared the same muscle memory. You can end it, the duplicate said between strikes. But you won't be Kael anymore. Lyra's voice entered his mind, soft and urgent. If you stop now, we all die. The choice pressed against him like a blade at his throat. He could pull back, keep what remained of himself, or he could surrender and become the weapon they needed. He met Lyra's gaze once, then let the lattice consume him entirely. The battlefield went silent in an instant. The shadow creatures froze mid-strike, their forms unraveling into dust that spiraled into the fractured sky. The awakened stood unmoving, their lattice fading to a steady glow. Kael lowered his weapon, his chest heaving, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what he'd become. Lyra approached, her face unreadable. It's done, she said. He searched her eyes. Is it over? She looked to the horizon, where the jagged vessels still hung in the air waiting. You think they'll stop now? Her words landed like a cold blade, cutting through the false calm. The fissures in the sky pulsed once more, brighter than before, as if answering her.